Welcome to Agents of Revenue, the Revenue Obsessed podcast, where we talk about all things AI agents and all things revenue. I'm your host, David Walker, the co-founder and CEO of Spara. My guest today is the former RevOps leader at Deel, an engine co-founder of the RevTech Review, and is currently the VP of RevOps at Zoominfo. She is exceptional, and she is definitely revenue obsessed. Welcome, Mollie Bodensteiner.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me here today, David.
So, Mollie, you've done a ton of really cool things. You've written about a bunch of really cool things. I would love to just get a little bit of overview of what you're working on at Zoominfo. What's your main focus in your role? And then we're going to dive in and get a little tactical on a project you recently took on.
Yeah, absolutely. Without, beating a dead horse, and let me just start by killing animals here, right? Like main focus, AI,
Let's get right into it.
transformation, innovation, right? Like all the things. So joined Zoominfo about 2 months ago here, taking over the revenue operations organization. What that means, right, is like we all, as revenue operators who are listening in, understand like we're at this pivotal point. Things are, transitioning. The core components of, how do we support the revenue org? But then we're also really being challenged with in a very different way. I think we've always had this challenge and this opportunity, but it's now accelerated is like, how do we transform go to market, right? And I like to use the word transform because I look at this as like not how do we AI everything? And I think that's where a lot of my frustration or my, weariness comes in is like, everyone's like, how do we put an agent on this? How do we, make this agentic? It's like, but maybe you don't have to. Right? Like also, but like coming in and just understanding like our opportunities to provide a better customer experience, right? Provide a better seller experience. And whether that's automation, whether that's AI, whether that's process improvement, whether that's different motions, whether that's improved products, right? Like I think we need to all take that lens and that step back there, but doing a lot of, that work here within the team, great organization. I've been a Zoominfo customer, for 10 plus years. So it's really fun to like be on the inside now.
Love that. And I was at a conference this morning at RevFest. Shout out to Janet Go Nimbly. And yeah, there was all this talk about, it was just AI tools, AI tool takeover. And we had sort of a funny moment in one of the sessions where we were just sort of level set on, it's funny, we talk about AI tools everywhere, but everyone's here because they want to learn stuff and because the number one thing I hear in all of GTM is that in-person conferences are the best way to generate new business. And it's kind of this refresher. It's like we're literally at a conference to generate new business, which is not a use of AI, but we're only talking about using AI. Refreshing reminder that, it's all about achieving some sort of goal in some way. How we get there is not the job description.
Right. And we now have this just open additional mechanism that can help to support us. But I think we're so far lost on like, that's the only mechanism.
Yeah. So tell me what you're focused on right now at Zoominfo. Give us some details on a project that you've been working on. I'd love to dive in a little bit and get tactical.
Yeah, I posted kind of a spicy, unhinged take last week on LinkedIn on sales methodologies being bullshit, right? And we can take an attribution is also bullshit conversation for another time. But like one of the big things, like whenever I come into a new organization, it's less about like, what are we doing? What are we doing? What methodology do we run? Like that kind of stuff. It's like, what is actually the health of our pipeline? You can have your forecasting, you can have your prediction, right? Like that's just math. It doesn't matter, right? Like there's so much more that like needs to go into that. And so, one of the things that I looked at is like, there's really two paths. There's really like, should an opportunity even exist? And is it actually being worked well? One of which is, the craftsmanship and like the actual process. The other one is like the sentiment and like the front end of like what you're hearing from the customer. And I, always joke that like MEDDPICC and these methodologies are, just asking your rep to score their own test, right?
Yeah,
that's all.
Totally.
That's all we're doing. And so now we're like, okay, you don't even have to score your own test anymore. We're gonna have AI score your test for you. Great. Now we're just like letting somebody else score the test, but like are we even giving the right test, right? So a couple of things that like I immediately put in. The first is like a quality agent. Right. So like inspect the opportunities, right? It's not like what the AE is saying. It's not the outbound emails. It's like truly, is the prospect engaged? Are they showing up to the call? Like, do they say things? Are they showing buying signals? And like truly understanding, is this a real opportunity? And like you laugh, right? Because like some of them are just truly like phantom opportunities. And it's like, why is it in pipeline? That becomes a really good opportunity to like then get the support pieces in. I think a lot of organizations, and I'm like, been doing this for 15 years now. I'm going to like hate myself when I say what I say next. So like teeing this up is like marketing and sales alignment. kind of thing, right? Like we're still talking about this, but it's like so many times when it's in pipeline, like sales is like, don't touch this marketing, you're going to screw it up. But like, how do we get better at identifying those opportunities and working that through? And then the second is like, okay, let's assess the methodology, right? Like, great, let's pull, the call recordings. Let's look at the emails. Let's understand like the score. Like, do we keep it? Do we coach it? Do we close it? And like blending those two things together, like actually gives us the right view of pipeline, right? And like what's actually happening. Now, it doesn't negate the forecasting components and like the things that go into this, but like it does help make it stronger to have a meaningful review, right? Versus just, I think the way we've handled like pipeline reviews in the past, it's like you open this up and you look at these fields and you say like, okay, close date is in period and we haven't pushed it twice. And it's like, doesn't matter, right? Like, is it actually?
Yeah, I love that. So one of the topics I'm most obsessed with is, as humans, we just we get into ruts, right? We're used to things being a certain way. And when we think about the current GTM motion, right, it was predicated on the old world where we didn't have AI, where human conversations were our scarcest resource, right? We had to protect AE time, so like we built the SDR to have a cheaper initial conversation because we don't want to talk to people until we know it's worth talking to them, but we can't know if it's worth talking to them until we talk to them, right? So the whole motion is built on that sort of the fundamentals of what existed 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And this is a perfect example, right? MEDDPICC or any of these methodologies, the purpose originally, I think, was basically saying, hey, this is a better way to actually sell, right? It's an effective strategy for closing sales. And what it morphed into is basically like, here's the data fields that we care about and force the rep to fill into a CRM. The fact that we're still stuck thinking that way, and all of a sudden we have so much more analysis available to us. Like we just couldn't do conversational analysis 2 years ago. And so we had to ask the rep to basically abstract out X number of fields. And we were guessing that those were going to be leading indicators of future success. And the reality is like the perfect example of, everyone's thinking, okay, now there's AI, what flashy new tool do you have? But sometimes it's just questioning the basics of your motion. Like, does this literally make sense? Or was just this the best version of what we were capable of 2 or 3 years ago? And there's a whole new way of doing this thing because the real goal there is just to be able to predict the likelihood of a close. And clearly the way we were doing it was not the most effective.
For sure, right? And I think like, I'm laughing, right? Because like we also just, I think, pull methodologies and there's been great, there's fundamental research and things behind this, but it's like, what's the right methodology? Like I've gone into companies before that have a free motion, right? They're consumption based and they're like, yeah, we run MEDDPICC. And it's like, what's your average deal cycle? 20 days. Why are you running MEDDPICC? Like that's
totally
an enterprise motion. Like we're just doing what we think we should be doing because it's the thing that's getting the most attention on LinkedIn. And the spicy take I have on this is like everything you're doing from a MEDDPICC side is to support the seller, right? Like what are the things you're actually then doing to support the customer? And like, how do you start to then, and it's, again, you want to identify those pieces because they help to drive, the quality of the deal. And like, that is actually set up right from the forecasting, understand the paper process, the timeline, the budget, like those are still important things, but it's like, how are you making sure you're selling the right thing and setting the customer up for success, right? Those aren't actually truly pieces that go deep in these methodologies.
Yeah. Totally right. It's more of a tabletop exercise to some degree, and that's always been the problem with it. Versus doing the actual analysis on the raw data. Right, the conversational data is the answer. I was having this conversation the other day where it's like, hey, your CRM is just a proxy, right? The current form of a CRM with manual data entry, et cetera, is just a proxy for what's actually happening, and it's historically been our best estimation or our best proxy. But now suddenly we can analyze the raw data. And that's what really matters, right? Is to your point, what is the customer literally saying? I mean, that matters. How do they feel about your product, about your process? Okay, so I want to get back to, this is a great project. So you took this on, you said, okay, hey, I think we can understand our pipeline health better, right? How did you think about sort of structuring that project, setting goals, setting KPIs, communicating that internally? Like walk us through sort of the first stage of planning, the execution, and then the results.
Yeah, so
or did you just YOLO it and just go do it?
Well, so this is like where I think my approach on a lot of things, just from my experience, has been is like there's move fast and break shit. And this is one of those things where this is something that like I took the approach of like move fast, but like don't break shit, but like learn quickly, right? Because I think anytime you try to prove a concept with data, you need to have the data to prove the concept. And so for me, it was like, let's take and build these two agents, right? And like luckily for me, I have a product that I can build this in, right? So like I was able to use go-to-market studio and the components of Zoominfo to move really fast on this. I'm not dependent on a data science team or like anything like that. And I have enough skill to be able to like write my right prompts and have the rooted data set to be able to say like, let's score these, right? Let me go in and take and create these two agents. Let's start, I'm going to say simple and see what we get from like inkling. Let's start to slice this down, and let's actually then do it on some of our historical ones as well and say like what won, what lost, like what do we pull on this, and start to root that and then take that to the business with conviction. That's like, hey, look what this looks like. And I think, we did this in a week. Like, and it, it was myself and one other person on the team that really like, not to say like, and again, I'm not advocating like do things behind closed doors, like did tell people like, hey, I'm thinking about this and this, but like, it's like, let's get data behind it and then let's evolve it. Right. And I think that's one of the huge things that like is the blessing and probably the curse of this like world is we can move fast. Right. And like should move fast where it makes sense. But sometimes we move fast in the wrong places. Like anything that's going to disrupt a customer experience, a seller's like right to win and right to earn, like you need to spend different amount of time on. But like something like this is like, it's generating a data point that we want to be able to validate to use in decision making, to use in focus, to use in the ability to work with enablement to say like, hey, these are coaching triggers that we should have. But without having like that rooted data almost like running in the background, it's hard to say like we should or shouldn't do this. And I think that's where a lot of people get tripped up is like you look at this as like a big initiative. It's not, right? To me, it's not to say a paper cut, but it's like you can move fast on it and you can iterate on it and you can learn from it, but it's not fundamentally changing the way you work on day one.
I love this. So that was the answer that I honestly thought you were going to give me, and I was hoping that you would give me. I think we're in this interesting paradigm where often we don't really know exactly what the perfect way of thinking about the project is until we sort of start. And so we just did something that I think is kind of indicative of this broader point. Historical product process at Spara was going to be typical for most companies, like create a PRD, right? You plan it, blah, blah, blah. You go through the steps, design, product, user interviews, goes to engineering, gets built, QA, user testing, right? Launch.
Everything changed 10 times over and you're starting back.
Yeah, totally. So we flipped recently where we have a product we can dog food, right? It's a go-to-market AI platform. So we use it to sell Spara, which is great. But we just flipped it where we've given engineering the ability to launch anything to Spara as a customer internally. So not to our other customers, right? But to ourselves. We dog food it, we play with it, we give feedback on what about it is useful. Then we go write the PRD. So we've actually already built the prototype. We've already tested it. We've already gotten real meaningful results from it. Then we write the PRD, which is basically like what did we learn? How do we polish this to make it practically useful to our customers? And then we go launch it or we throw it away. And that is such a huge shift in how we build stuff, whether it's for our end products or internally.
The thing that I love about this, and tends to be like my advice for my team just across everything, it's not even product, is like you get such a better outcome when you give somebody something to react to.
Yes.
What your engineering team is doing is giving your field, right, your team something to react to. Like I can react and say this sucks, but I can then more concretely tell you why it sucks, right? Or like what is missing, right? And like it's the same thing. Like I don't go into a meeting with a stakeholder and say like, okay, we know we need to build a dashboard. What do you want to see, right? Like I go in with a POV, go in with a thought process and let people poke holes in it and react to it because you're going to move way faster. And you're going to get a better outcome than ideation. And like, I think that has always kind of been my philosophy, even before this world, is like, I'm going to call it the shitty first draft, but like, put the shitty first draft together. And like, people will give you such better feedback when they can look at something tangibly than they can when it's a hypothetical. And like, love that your product team is doing that, right? Like, it also lets your engineers get creative and like throw spaghetti on the wall.
Yeah. And the two ingredients that I find block a lot of companies from doing that are one, they need people like you, right? Who are high conviction, high confidence, low ego, willing to say, yeah, I tried that. That thing didn't work. On to the next, right? Or I'm going to iterate it. And that's rare, kudos to you. And then also a company that has a culture that's comfortable with that, right? I see so many companies where there's this massive fear of doing anything not perfect. And it's just it stifles innovation to such an extreme degree, right? It's like you're going to have your bar of perfect for external thing. There's areas where you have to be perfect, but the path to get there, if you're not willing to take risk and fail, right, you're definitely not going to get the perfect.
Well, and like in an operations, right? Like I don't think anything I've ever done has been perfect for more than 2 minutes before something's changed again, right? So like
Totally.
most of my days I'm looking for good enough.
There you go.
Right?
That's gonna be the title of this podcast. Looking for good enough. I love it. That's great. So okay, so we can sort of sidetrack a lot on this because this is wonderful. So all right, so 1 week, love that. Threw something out, got it live. Talk to me about the process. How did you validate in QA? Right? Did you go and sort of spot check with some individual reps and their deals? Like how did you think about validating the sort of accuracy or usefulness of the outputs you were generating?
Yeah. So what we did was took and ran this, right? Ran on historicals. We looked at like, okay, what's the output? And like, we didn't start with the entire ecosystem either, right? We picked the right segment, like one segment, perfect that. You can, adjust, right? Because like otherwise we'd boil the ocean. SMB
Yep.
is very different than enterprise. Let's pick one segment. Let's run through this. Let's look at current state, right? Like what's closing this month, what's created this month, like time period, and then take it to the field. So you take it to the field at the executive level of here's what I see, right? This is what the data is telling me. This is what I did. I want to make sure you're aware of what this means and what we can do about it. It's all the opportunity, right? Like the fact of saying like, in this fake numbers, right? But if I came back and said, hey, 27% of our opportunities in late stage are phantom opportunities and we don't actually have a customer bought in, like that's a big red flag. But it's like, what does this tell us we need to do? How do we correct this behavior? And like at the end of the day, this all comes down to what decisions are you going to make off of the data? Which, likely is a qualification decision that happens further up funnel, right? This becomes a preventative measure. So you talk through then at the executive level more of that strategy of what you're seeing. But then at the field level, right, it's like truly going in and validating that. And I like to tend to start with the chain. I'm going to say the chain of command a little bit, like at more of the director, the manager level, like understanding there. And then also at the rep level, like people get very protective if you come in and you're like, hey, your pipeline's off, right? Like that's not the right approach. And it's like better to go like, deal by deal, like help me unpack this, right? And like seek to understand as well. Hey, because the other part of this is like, did something happen with this deal that no one knows, right? Did you go out to dinner with David?
Yep,
and you
totally.
had a great meeting at dinner and the notes never got anywhere, back to human connection, right? And so starting to identify like those types of gaps going through and building this. And again, I think when people understand the intention behind what you're doing, it changes the narrative.
Yeah. So I want to highlight a couple of things you said there, which I really like, because I often see companies struggle at this phase. We did the thing, we did the MVP. Now, how do I make a case that this is worth expanding and as you said, operationalizing, right? Because you're really doing it to be able to do something else, right?
Yeah.
It's like the so what? So what do I do with that information? And I think that too often there's this sort of like, okay, how do I run, some sort of analysis, right? Across the entire customer base to validate this is right. It's like, no, let's just pick a little segment. And then I like that you're, go the sort of leadership route, get some fundamental buy-in, some understanding, present the information. How does this feel? But then going to the reps and asking questions. That's so important because what we're really doing is we're saying, okay, there's a human who has a broad context of this deal. And in their brain, they have some overarching thesis of what the deal looks like or the opportunity looks like. They then create a bunch of structured data that gives us this other look at what the deal looks like. And we're going to use AI to basically go back to all the raw data and try to simulate what the rep is feeling. And so just that basic understanding of, hey, let's talk to the person and understand and ask questions and just be comfortable with the fact that they're going to say like, I went out to dinner. This deal's amazing. It's closing next week. 100% bet my badge on it. And our model said, this one's dead in the water. That's okay, right? That's like a feature, not a bug. We want to find those things at this stage. Or
you get to the different root cause that's like, yeah, I'm keeping it in pipeline because our ROE tells me that like it's better for me to hold, and there's just like some other smoking gun that's like, oh man, we're like another rooted process is actually creating bad behavior because we try to fix something else, right? Like, so it's like, but you don't get there without that like beginning seeking to understand.
Yep. I love that. So let's talk results. How would you quantify right? Now you're looking at this a little bit in the rearview mirror. How do you quantify the results?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. I think, we start to look at the trend visibility behind this. So, like, do we start to see the health of our deals improving? I hate being like, do you actually see less pipeline, but higher quality pipeline? Like, that to me becomes the piece, right? Like, everyone has pipeline reviews and they have their like what they automatically close and like all of this, right? Like, do we actually get better at saying, I'm going to say saying no sooner? And because we do that, we get into the right nurtures, we get to the right marketing, we get to the right warm up, right? And we create a better customer experience on this, but we also have better outputs for our rep because at the end of the day, it's time, it's allocation of resource, it's allocation of capacity. And I think anyone would listen and I'd rather have 200 mediocre deals or would I rather have 25 phenomenal ones?
Yep, totally. Predictable pipeline, right? I mean, if you have a
Yeah.
predictable pipeline, you can then increase the volume, but you're going to be able to make really good strategic decisions around that versus, a pipeline that's twice as big, but a third is predictable. It's going to be a lot harder to scale.
Yeah, and every company right now is a race to like, how do I'm going to say, become more productive, right? Like, and I'm going to use like air quotes
Yeah.
on that. And like, I think when we talk productive, we're talking about how can you do more with less, right? Do more, do
Yeah.
more, do more. And like, to me, this is a mechanism of doing the right more, right? And like, it's an exercise of focus and prioritization than it is on a volume play.
Yeah. So if you had to put a number on it, how much more predictable or how much more accuracy do you think you have in your pipeline?
I can't concretely answer that because we're not to like a definitive point, but like my guess is that like hypothetically, and if I put a goal on myself, like I think we likely see about a 20 to 30% increase in like just better quality from this, especially as
Love
it gets
that.
more into the later stage, because I think we catch more in the top a lot faster.
Yep. And I want to go full circle here. Remind everybody how long you've been at Zoominfo, please.
60 days, right? And
60 days.
transparency launched this last week. So
Yeah.
still very, very early.
That's amazing. And when I talk to great operators, this is the kind of cadence that they're working. And there's obviously a recipe that we've touched on, right? You have to be willing to try something and fail. You have to be able to roll up your sleeves and sort of get dirty and say, let's see what happens a little bit. You have to be able to then go get the right organizational buy-in, right? But with this recipe, that is unbelievable and shocking, right? 3 years ago, that was not even something people would be talking about 60 days ramping, right?
Yeah.
And you're
I mean,
talking about
3
a
years
project
ago,
you
I'd be
fully
writing
executed.
like Python, like random forest regression models to just even get myself started here, right?
Totally. 100%. 100%. You'd still be trying to figure out where the data lives at 60 days. That is so cool. That's my favorite part, by the way, about this sort of era we live in. There's all sorts of challenges, but that incredible world-class operators are able to execute at a pace. And it's not just the speed of execution, right? It's that you're able to spend more of your time. What we're really saying is that 5 years ago, your 60 days would be spent on things that were fairly low value, right? And now you're able to jump in and do high value work right away. It's really
And
cool.
and I think the best operators is like, we always know what we need to do, right? Like I mean, this concept of what I said is like, I've done this before. I've ran these before, right? Like I've built this before. Like it's not like an earth shattering thing to like do pipeline inspection, right? Like no one now here is like, wow, she's on the cutting edge of pipeline inspection. I'm not. So please don't take that away. Like I'm on the like, I have access to take action, right? And so like in the world now, access has opened up in a way that we've like never felt it before. And and it's not because it's been gated or hindered. It's just availability is so much easier. And if you have the right, again, back end like data to build on top of, you move so much faster. And like that to me was probably like the biggest blessing in coming to Zoominfo, just based on like what Zoominfo does. And a lot of like why I was excited to be here is like I'm working on the best data set that I can, which allows me to move a lot faster, just selfishly.
Yeah. That's awesome. So what's next? What are you thinking about over the next, asking you over the next 6 months feels like it's, an eternity that we couldn't possibly even imagine. So let's say a couple months.
Yeah. I think I'm always like, my heart is always in like this concept of pipeline, right? I'm background marketing operations, like spend a lot of time, at Deel looking at like pipeline operations. I think there's so much like I laugh, I'm going to just say bullshit around like what people are actually doing from a prospecting perspective, like where, everyone's like, I send 10 million emails out of clay every month and generate $100 million in pipeline. I'm like, no, you don't. But I appreciate that you can write a good LinkedIn post about that. And so like, to me, I really want to get deep into like the inbound, the outbound, true management of generating pipeline, right? And like back to the customer experience. And like when you put the psychology behind it, like consumers have these expectations and we've always had these expectations, but they've continued to change, right? Like generic is not good enough anymore. It never has been good enough. But also like weak AI isn't good enough either, right? Like don't ping me and be like, I saw you wrote a LinkedIn post about MEDDPICC. Like I'm like, that's not how you like be real with me. Explain how you're gonna help solve my problems. Get a good catch in there, but like be timely, be relevant. Like all of that still applies, but like this new level of like creativity comes into that. So like I think the area like I'm so bullish on is like how do you keep like refining prospecting and like those motions. And to your point that you said at the very beginning of the call, it's not gonna just be email. It's not just going to be phone, right? Like, I think we're going to get into this world where people like opening their mailbox and they like to have these human to human connections. And they like more of these roundtables that come up even in like virtual environments. You even are seeing this with just like, I'm going to say like virtual people, right? Like you now like are interacting with these, like you don't interact with just a chat bot, you interact with like Sherry, the chat bot as this like, so like, I think this like, we all now are going to want to touch some grass. So how does B2B SaaS bring grass into the equation?
Yep. I love that. How do we bring grass into the equation? We had some grass-fed steak last night. We hosted a GTM leaders series and, we got 12 GTM leaders at a steak easy. I don't know if you ever heard of a steak easy. It's literally a speakeasy that is also a steakhouse.
Oh, interesting.
Which is an amazing concept.
Yeah. I mean, every bar in Iowa is essentially that, but yeah.
Love that. I love that. No. But this one, see, Molly, here's the thing. This one, we had the drinks in one room that looked like an old timey library. And then part of the bookshelf opened to the private room, right? So the steakhouse is sort of hidden in the back, right? It's all the fun. And, a dinner like that is something that, I was doing some things like that 2 years ago, but not a lot, to be perfectly honest. And now we host dinners every single month. We go to events all the time. I'm totally with you. And the I sent 10,000 outbound emails thing always cracks me up because outbounding is a signal to noise problem, right? And so, we're all basically just saying like, hey, the noise just went up 10x, 100x, 1,000x. And, that just means the signal is going down. And so it's kind of this like global reverse network effect, right? The more people that just hit go on 10,000 outbound emails, the less effective everyone's emails are in general. And so, we're just going to see this sort of regression almost in a positive way back to touching grass.
Yeah. And I like, no one should take away from this. Like Molly said, email is going to be dead and it's not. Like those things are still going to be here, right? But I think like, it used to be like you had to see something 7 times before like it actually clicked, right? Like now our attention spans are that of, probably a squirrel, maybe going even further down. Like it's likely 14 to 20 to 50 times before you actually like click, right? Like of what something does too. And that's where a lot of like, there's 2 ways that I think about signaling, right? There's the listening for the signals, right? And understanding like David is showing this type of intent. He's coming to my events. He's engaging, like he's doing the research. There's this. And then there's creating the signal for David. And like you need kind of both of those pieces running together to help improve the velocity. But like, it's not always going to be like, especially when we're all doing our own research, we don't know what's real and what's fake, right? I think that was like one of the big themes that I have taken away of like conversations. Like people just don't know what's good or not. And I was on a webinar with Adam Smith, who leads our product organization. And he said, my biggest piece of advice when you go to a company's website is do a control find and replace the word AI with data. And if the message makes sense, there's probably validity there. If it doesn't, it's probably garbage.
That's cool. I like that. That's a good little tip. Yeah. I mean, it's fascinating right now. You've touched on one or two things that I think is also really interesting, which is the buyer experience. I am obsessed with this because, where we were talking about sort of this scarce resource, right, of a human conversation.
Right.
When we really think about the standard B2B SaaS GTM motion that we've been running for 15 years, it's basically a game in putting up speed bumps. for our buyer, right? It's like, hey, we actually need to vet you. We need to make sure you're willing to go through this process. And only once you've gone through this process will we sort of like be willing to engage with you. And what's fascinating is the same time that that's been happening and basically staying consistent for the past 15 years, consumer purchases have gotten radically more efficient, radically faster, more on demand. And I always sort of remind myself, you know who makes B2B buying decisions? Humans.
Consumers.
Yeah, humans who go home and then shop on Amazon and book flights on Kayak, right? Like, I mean, it's the delta between the two has gotten so extreme. And so I love that you bring up, I don't actually hear a lot of RevOps leaders bring up the buying experience, the customer experience, right? Which is actually a bigger challenge often than sort of internal efficiency or internal productivity or data cleanliness, right? It feels less in our control. So I think a lot of people shy away from thinking about it, right? Because it's scary. There's the X factor, there's the input of this outside party. But ultimately, if we want to move the needle on the biggest metrics that matter the most, like revenue and deal cycles and all that kind of stuff, it's going to be providing our buyers a better experience.
Because I'm pretty sure my team hates me on Fridays. They might hate me Monday through Thursday too, but like likely on Fridays is because I block time every Friday and I secret shop. Right? I take something that I go through as a customer and I say like, did this make sense? Like, why did, and it's like, you go through this and it's less to, it's not trying to trick anyone or trap anyone. It's trying to understand like the customer experience. Right. And like when I filled out a form, like, did you ask me the question because it's providing me value or is it because you're trying to figure out where I need to route to? Right? Which could be a downstream value, but there's still perception that comes into it. And it's like, where do you put those friction points in? Where do you see like, the background that happened? Like, does it meet always the customer expectations? One of the things that like, if I'm filling out a form to have a demo, I don't want somebody to call me to book a demo. Just let me book the demo on my own. Again, back to like, we now live in instant gratification and this is what we want, right? And if you're like, I want somebody to like reach out to help prepare for the demo, great. Put that behind it. But like, don't create friction in what you're trying to get to. And I think if you are an operator, like you should be secret shopping all of this because it not only lets you see the front end, it lets you see the back end as well and where those breakpoints are in the actual process from the experience.
Yeah. If we're intellectually honest, right, with the standard sales motion, right? It's basically our buyers decide to be interested in us. We sort of like, okay, great, cute, go, try to find the answer to your question on our website with 1,000 pages of product lingo that like maybe means something to you, maybe doesn't. We hope that they go find it. Right, that we mostly have gated. And then we try to get them to give us a piece of information such that we can then go outbound to them, re-engage them. I'm like, the concept of re-engaging, this person was engaged. They were literally there. They were expressing interest in your product. It's such an unbelievable the amount of human hours we spend trying to get people back. It's like, well, we're not thinking about how to solve this problem holistically. Sure, we can make getting them back more efficient, or we could just try to provide more value and have deeper conversations when they are engaged in the first place.
Try not to lose them on the front end, right? And like
exactly.
No, I'm laughing because I think about it as the same thing that like we now, like the new hot thing is like, we also do it to because I always think like I have customers as my, P1s, right? But like my sellers are my customers too. And we're doing the same, shit with our sellers in terms of the fatigue that we're giving to them is like, okay, great. Like go work in these 22 different tools and bounce around. And then like, we still expect to keep you engaged and moved as well. And I know I just totally pivoted this conversation, but like, it's the same thing. Like, okay, customer, you come in, you fill in this, web form. We're going to click you to your email. We're going to click you to 12 other places. Like, we're going to pick up the phone. We're going to change the medium on you, right? Like, you've taken my attention away.
Yeah.
And like, you move the eye off the ball. We do the same thing with like our SDRs and with our AEs and like with our CSMs as well.
I totally agree. Internally, with every advancement that makes changing our systems faster and easier, which has been shocking. And literally today is so much easier than 1 week ago, than 2 weeks ago, than a month ago. I mean, the rate is crazy, but with every innovation there and every ability there, premium on change management is just going up. And I think that's going to be the new battlefield, right? The new battlefield is going to be like, okay, cute. We can build anything we want at any time, using a multitude of different tools. Can the humans who are actually leveraging these keep up with what the hell we're doing and actually be effective at their jobs versus sitting in training all day because they're trying to learn the new thing? And that's going to become the big rate limiter is like, does more change actually yield better results? There's a flex point at which it actually yields worse results.
I think we make people so much less productive in a lot of situations that we don't realize because we have put this like artificial label on top of productivity in terms of like agentic, right? Is so productive, but we actually created 15 different new steps into our 5-step workflow, and now it's a 20-step workflow that you're coordinating not only the person, but also the agents behind the person and the accuracy there. And then, my favorite thing is like everyone wants to build, no one wants to govern, that you're likely even just creating a shit experience on steroids.
Yeah. The amount of AI agent, demos that are really great in a black box. And you're like, okay, cool. So now I'm 2 months in and we've shifted a business priority, or we've changed part of our motion, or we've adjusted our ICP, or we've shifted our pre-qualification criteria, or we've made basically any change. How do I do that? And they're like, oh, I don't know. You like Slack us. We'll maybe help you figure that out. The agent itself is the easy part today. It's the internal infrastructure to govern effectively. How do you understand your prompts? How do you do QA at scale? How do you A/B test? These are not new concepts, but I'm seeing none of this applied to new agentic tooling. And I think that's ultimately going to be what's most important, because anyone can go build an agent very fast, right? The harnesses are readily available, all the toolings, there's workflow platforms you can use. My 11-year-old
can build agents, right? Like,
exactly. Totally.
Should they? Maybe. Depends, right? Like everyone wants a penthouse, right? Like we're all like in this penthouse world, but like no one's built the elevator, right? No one's got the lobby. Like we don't have the doorman. We don't have these things, right? Like, and it's like great. Like if you put an agent on crap data, you just have built a faster path to a dumpster, right? And so it's like goes back to like the data, the context layer, the actual like orchestration behind this. Back to your point, like we changed our IC pool. Did somebody just like make that up? Or like how does that get then back rooted into the differential and like the training model and all of this? And then, you've got everyone with all their, the scary thing for me is like back to the governance, you got all these people with their Claude code and their, little micro Mac running everything local that like you're like black boxing what could actually be happening.
Totally. And hopefully the optimist in me is saying like, okay, great, that's part of the innovation and learning curve, right? Kind of like, let's all go a little wild, let's all figure everything out, roll up our sleeves, and then let's make sure we're actually doing it right. The pessimist in me is like, boy, we're heading towards some serious problems if we allow this sprawl to continue too far.
Yeah, and I think like it's interesting, right? Because like there's value in people not being scared to do, right? Like fear-based cultures like never work on this. So like there's value in people building and like building in a way that you're not sitting there and being like, okay, here's how your scaffolding needs to work. Like and coming in, like if I sit it with like an SDR and I go deep tech on them, like it's like you already have the challenge of just teaching something new, right? And like getting people excited about it. It's at then what point does it become more, again, I think RevOps leaders, like we're going to be product managers more than anything, right? And it's like, what point do these get productized? How does it get productized? Like, how do you put governing behind it? There's that incubation, but then there's like the productization that has to happen. And we're still like in the incubation side right now.
I love it. Mollie, this has been fantastic. I've got 2 more questions, rapid fire for you. I'm just going to drop some really big ones on you right at the end.
Perfect.
What are you excited about, just in general?
Yeah, I think I'm excited about everything, to be honest with you. Like to me as an operator, like this, I've always been in automation, right? I've always been in tech, like data science, data architecture, like I just am able to move faster, and that like excites me. I think it excites me and terrifies me and scares me all at the same time, right? But I think I'm excited about the art of the possible more than I probably ever have been. Like, I think I'm at the right point in my career with like understanding so much of the fundamentals that like it makes myself and other people at this stage of like RevOps like so much more powerful and so much more impactful to a business.
Love that. And what are you nervous about?
Everything.
I had a feeling you were going to do the same answer on both sides. Yeah.
Like I think all good operators are paranoid and we worry about everything, and that is the nature and also what makes us great. Daughter asked us in the car the other day, like, will there even be jobs for me? She's 11, right? So I think about like just the state, all the things that like keep one up at night, right? And like I have to remind myself of like the Industrial Revolution and like where we're going and like how we get ahead of that, right? And like I think, it's the people who who do lean in and do learn and like do understand and like stay fresh. And like that's what's so exciting for me is that like I have never wanted to be the person who sits in like a boardroom and talks about things and puts slide decks together. Like the expectation now is like at a VP level, at an executive level, you like your hands are on keyboard, right? Like, and if you're not, you're gonna fall behind. And I think like this playing field is so much more interesting.
Love it. I love it. Mollie, thank you so much. You are definitely revenue obsessed. You are super impressive. You've accomplished in the first 60 days, and cannot wait to see what's next for you and the RevOps org at Zoominfo. Thank you so much for
Thanks so
joining.
much.